So, welcome, Devan, to Global Influencers Hub. Here we talk about the life journeys of influencers, social media influencers, and we cannot wait to deep dive into yours. What I mean by deep dive is actually going back to your childhood.
hmm
So, tell us about Devan as a child.
Yeah, grew up in Toronto, so in Richmond Hill, north of the city, and my childhood was filled with a lot of food, to be honest with you. I was always attracted to like the sights and sounds and aromatics, pots banging and things sauteing. My life was really all about food as a kid growing up. I was a very active kid, did a lot of sports, and I'd come home from school and I'd always be interested to see what my mom was cooking in the kitchen. But yeah, I had a lot of fun growing up. I never thought I would become a chef. I never thought that I would follow a career, or follow my passion in food. But it's where I ended up, and I couldn't be happier.
Wonderful. So, what's your earliest memory of cooking?
Earliest memory of cooking, probably
Yeah.
5 or 6 years old, sitting on
Wow.
the floor. Yeah, sitting on the floor of my grandmother's apartment. Bless her soul, she's no longer with us. And she was using what we call lorha and sil. It's essentially the large brick, small brick to grind.
Okay.
And she'd be making what we call coconut choka, which is essentially grated coconut that is dried
Okay.
out. You could do it in the sun, but here in Canada, we do it in the oven, you know.
Right.
And then once it's dried out, you mix it with, chili peppers and garlic, mustard oil, different seasoning, garam masala, different things like this. And you build a beautiful condiment. So like that's always something that I reference as one of my oldest memories of cooking.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So, who in your family was the biggest influence?
My grandmother was huge, but probably my
That's what
mom. And
I was gonna say that. It seemed like
yeah,
it. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, she's in a lot of my content. And the reason why is because I think I just spent so much time with her. But my mom has a very cool story in that she, coming to Canada, would take a lot of inspiration from people that she met here, things that she saw on television, things that she might have heard on the radio or out and about, and she would bring those things home. So there was like a lot of Italian food and a lot of world and food in my home growing up, in addition to the Guyanese food or the South Asian inspired, the Indo-Guyanese food that we grew up with. So there was a lot of stuff happening in my house. It opened up my horizons as well in my mind.
Nice. Now, were you a picky eater, or were you pretty much open to trying new things?
No, growing up, I remember certain things like not liking olives, not liking licorice. I still don't really like licorice, but I'm obsessed with olives these days. Maybe the brine was too intense growing up, but I've always, for some reason, wanted to try everything. Even recently, like I just had tarantula in Cambodia, So I've always been open to trying things. I don't know where that came from, but growing up at an early age, sushi or eating offal, edible
Right.
organs, sweetbreads,
Right.
things like that stuff never really scared me. I say I'll try everything at least once.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. That's neat. Now, what is that pivotal moment when you decided to become a chef?
It was in 2008, 2009. I had been going in and out of universities,
Okay.
doing continuing education classes, and I just wasn't going anywhere. Growing up, my parents really wanted me to follow a career in medicine, engineering, law. I thought this was like a
Story
brown
of
thing.
our lives, I think. Yeah.
I thought this was a brown thing, but as I travel and as I do live demos and as I do my work, I find out it's a world thing. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. This is what the parents want for the kid, right?
Exactly.
So
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
right. So my dad was a very successful businessman. So I started to follow that. I started to go to school for business and stuff like that. But I was going in circles, but I was always obsessed with food. So I decided finally, my friends and close family convinced me to go to culinary school. This was in 2009. I joined, and I never looked back since. I went from like studying accounting and like studying standard deviation and stats and all these things that
Oh my
I didn't
goodness.
love.
Okay.
Yeah, doing all that. I went from that to studying mother sauces and internal temperatures of meats and saw and butchery and all these things, and like it was everything that I was already obsessed with. I just didn't know I could follow something that I was super passionate about. So when I finally got into culinary, everything changed, and obviously I've never looked back. We're now 16 years
Right.
later.
Of course. Now, what was your biggest culinary break? And how did that
Culinary.
shape your journey? Break. When was the break in
Oh,
your in
um,
your culinary journey?
there's a bunch, to be honest with you. When I left
Sure.
the food dudes,
Tell us about it. We are here to hear it all.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you know what? There's a couple actually. One was when I left the food dudes, which is a massive to this day culinary empire in the city with restaurants and over 1,000 events catered a year and stuff like that. When I left them from culinary school, I joined the food dudes '09, and I left in 2012. When I left, there came across my table a job opening for the executive chef of a showroom, a multi-million-dollar showroom, which housed Bosch, Thermador, and Egano appliances. Really fancy, fancy, fancy place. And they were looking for someone with a lot of experience. So I pretended like I had a lot of experience. They didn't really need an executive chef in there. They needed a chef, not an
Okay.
executive chef. But even
Okay.
then, like, was I qualified for it? Maybe, I don't know.
Mm.
But getting that job, basically, I had to go in and do a demonstration, and I studied up on the appliances ahead of time. And basically, at the end of that interview, they said, "This is our guy," right? And the reason why that job for me was so pivotal is because it taught me how to deliver key messaging, and it taught me how to cook while engaging a person or an audience. A big part of
Mhm.
what I do today, a big part of what I do today is live demonstration and cooking in front of a
Right.
camera or an
Right.
audience.
Right.
So
Correct.
this is
Yeah.
in 2012. This gave me a lot
Mhm.
of experience. Every day I was doing demos. Yes, I had to talk about the key characteristics and
Mhm.
functionality of steam ovens, of zone induction cooktops, of ovens,
Mhm.
of dishwashers, etc., etc. But it taught me how to problem solve. Like, I would make mistakes, things would happen, and I'd have to cook on the fly. Not just me sitting here sauteing something and cooking it. I'm constantly having to hold your attention the whole time. So that is so training at a young age. You fast forward to today, or beginning of COVID, when I started Chef Dev at home on social media, and people are like,
Mhm.
"Wow, you're such a natural. How you're so good at this?" And it's like I put so much work into it, and I made a lot of mistakes back then that hopefully, I don't make too much of them today. So getting that job, it's called Lux Appliance Studio. Getting that job was massive. Another big break for me was from that job. I ended up getting on Cityline. And Cityline is a massive, massive daytime show here in Canada. It just ended after 40 years. It ended last April, and I started in March 2014. So I did a full 10-year run, and that as
Wow, that's
well.
massive. That's massive.
It's massive because it, like, to this day, I like any airport I go to, anywhere I go, someone's like, "Hey man, I know you from Cityline." So it built a huge audience for me. And again, it taught me how to cook live in front of people. There was a live audience at all times, and it taught me about show business, makeup, styling, dressing the set, thinking on the fly, like we're cooking live. There were so many times where, like, I take a chicken breast and you like when they're like 5, 4, 3, and they're counting down, and like if you don't have stuff preheated, like there was a couple times where you put something in a pan and there's no sizzle, but you just put it in
Right. Right.
island. So you have to be able to spin that and laugh and make a joke about it, and it
Correct.
taught me a lot of problem solving on this. Those couple breaks there.
So these really shaped you, I feel.
Oh, without question, they taught me so much
Yeah.
about life,
Yeah.
interacting with other people, and thinking on the fly.
Right. So what do you think was the best piece of advice you got during that early days of your career?
Something I hold to this day, and it actually is even before that, working at the
Okay.
food dude, Chef Adrian Nyman. When I first started there, it was tough. It was long hours. We were short staffed. I spent the first 2 weeks in the dish pit washing dishes. It was better. Like as an intern for them, it made more sense for them to just throw me into the dish pit, no dishwasher, than it was to actually get me cooking and doing things. So I was pretty upset at that point. But it was all part of my journey, and you got to pay your dues, kind of thing. I
Of
believe
course.
that. Yeah, but one thing like one thing I'll never forget is that shortly after maybe 6 or 7 months, I came back from an event and I packed away all my gear, but I didn't do a
Mm-hmm.
great job of it, and the kitchen wasn't super clean. So when the guys came in the next day, they noticed this. So Chef Adrian called me, or I think, yeah, he called me and he wanted to talk to me about this. And he said, no matter what, bro, always finish strong. I never forgot that. Like, for example, I can spend 3 or 4 days prepping for an event, but a lot of it comes down to the last half an hour, and finishing strong is one thing that I'll never forget. So, like, no matter how tired I am after an event to this day, 16 years later, no matter how exhausted and beat up I am, I'll make sure that everything is spotless. I need the place to look like whenever I'm cooked in there. So that's something. Finishing strong is to this day something.
Fabulous, fabulous. I think that's such a powerful thing. Very, very powerful. Absolutely fabulous. I think that's a huge message as well. Great
Absolutely.
message. Now you did talk about mistakes. So I'm going to go back to that. Now, can you tell us about what kind of mistakes you made in the early years and how did those
Um,
shape you? Because, see, I believe mistakes, we can talk about mistakes, but they're also learning experiences.
when I
You
first
know,
they are learning experiences. The whole thing with mistakes, I always encourage mistakes up until
of
now. I
course,
feel
of
like a
course.
lot of people feel like a lot of people don't attempt the recipe that I put online or the recipes that are in my cookbook because they're too afraid of making mistakes. But I tell everybody making mistakes logs experience and it
Of
teaches
course.
you not to do again, right? So there shouldn't be any fear of that failure because it's all going to give you something that you can move forward with. When I first started at Food Dudes, I remember I burnt like 3 balsamic glazes in a row. Balsamic glaze is something, it's a food trend that was around. It was on top of salads and on top of bread and on tables, but it's not really around anymore. But I remember I burned like 3 of them in a row because there's a very fine line when you're boiling very aggressively of that reduction, getting to the right consistency and then burning. And obviously, we take a pot of balsamic vinegar, we throw some sugar in there, maybe a splash of water, and you throw it on the stove, and then you do 10
Mhm.
of things, and this thing's bubbling away. But instead of keeping it low and slow, you just want to get it done. So I
Mm.
remember I burnt like 3 of them in a row, and I was so embarrassed. And it starts burning because it starts to smoke when it over reduces, right? So that taught me to be a little bit more patient, maybe cook at less high of a heat, and also to just be a little bit more mindful when you're multitasking, because being a chef is all about multitasking. If I
Of
come into
course.
the kitchen, I need to prep. We're not doing one thing at a time. We start with the longest tasks first. If something needs
Mm.
to be braising or boiling or baking, that gets work, and then you do all your finer things in between. We have to work that way. You have to work with efficiency of time. Another great story for you, I had a big ego when I first started out, right? And I shouldn't have. And it's something like I talk about humility and being humble all the time in my content these days. But back then, I was working at the Lux Appliance Studio in 2013, probably. I was doing a demo
Okay.
for like 8
Mhm.
people. It was an auction. They spent a lot of money to be there. So I went and bought scallops and like Wagyu and foie and like all the expensive stuff. And I remember I wasn't looking, which I don't look and chop all the time. I do lots of videos on this. But back then, I remember I was chopping parsley and I had the bunch of parsley but my thumb was sticking out. So we grab your bunch of parsley and my thumb is sticking out here. And I'm chopping and boom, I took off like you can't even see it anymore, but I took off like a big chunk of my thumb. And when it happened, like it went through the nail. It went through the nail and I kind of like it kind of had like a jerk moment. And I was like, oh shit. And quickly, I'm like, I need to go get something. And I ran to the back. And as I got to the back, it started bleeding and it wouldn't stop bleeding. To make matters worse, there were no gloves. There were black
Okay.
gloves. We would always have
Oh
gloves there.
my
There was no
goodness.
gloves that day. So I was so embarrassed. After like 10 minutes, they knew something was wrong, the guests. After 10 minutes, and we had to throw out that parsley. I think it was for a chimichurri. I had to like press a bar rag into my thumb and then wrap it around and hold it like this. And I went back out and I was so embarrassed.
Oh
And
my
it taught me,
goodness, it's
yeah,
crazy.
taught
Wow.
me to pay more attention to what I was doing. Not cook with so much ego, you know, have some humility. You know, it's not about showing off or trying to pretend like I know everything. And yeah, that's just two pretty embarrassing moments.
So that's a life mantra almost. That kind of like transformed you internally as well, I'm sure.
It definitely did. I forgot these stories.
Exactly, exactly. Now, Mad Love Cookbook. What sparked the idea of a book?
I've
And
always
what specific, was there a specific moment that you thought that, you need to pen them down?
I never I never thought the book would become what it has become today. I never thought it would put me on the trajectory that it has. I'm so grateful. I'll never be able to express how grateful I am. And we're talking about the second book, but that's another conversation. The initial book, I've always wanted to do a book, but I'll be honest with you, if I did it 5 years ago, I don't know how it would have turned out. And the reason why I say that is because in the past 3, 4 years, I've really started to own this lane of showcasing and modernizing East and West Indian cuisine, right? And that has become my theme. It's not all that I do. I'll cook pad
Mhm.
thai on my channel. I'll cook all
Mhm.
kinds of different things, you know.
Okay.
But a lot of what I do is East and West Indian, obviously from my like Guyanese upbringing, and then of course I lean heavily into my South Asian
Mm-hmm.
ancestry as well, right? But the cookbook was just like I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recipes compiled over the years, and people
Mm.
asking for them. And fortunately, with my new management that came on a few years ago,
Mm.
we were able to make this happen.
Cool. So tell us the story about the name Mad Love.
It's a great story, actually. When I came
Yeah.
back from traveling in 2020, I came.
Mm.
I was in Turks and Caicos cooking for a month, December 2019. I was cooking in India.
Mm.
I went
Oh,
and cooked
wow.
in,
Yeah.
I, yeah, all over the place. In Mumbai, I was on a cruise ship with my parents, but I was filming
Okay.
content, doing all kinds of fun stuff. Um, and then I cooked in Pakistan as well. I was brought to
Oh,
Lahore to run
okay.
a very successful pop-up.
Mm.
I cooked at Borough Market in London. Flew back March 15th, 2020. So I flew back just before the borders closed. My mom was like, "Get your ass home right now. They're closing the borders." So I started Chef Dev at home. Um, I had crazy food poisoning when I came back. March 20th, I emerged from my room after my quarantine, 5-day quarantine back then, and then I just wanted to put out a piece of content. So I graded like $50 worth of black truffle on craft dinner, macaroni and cheese. And I thought that I had to do a lot of theatrics with it for it to get views or
Mm.
for people to see it. What I realized from that video is people are more interested in the way that I cook, the tips and tricks that I naturally wove into the content. Again, going back to City Line and going to all the Lux Appliance demos. Like that's where all this comes from. And I started to do more and more content. And out of nowhere, I would sign off the videos with Mad Love. I talk with a lot of slang. Like I'll tell you, I'm mad hungry, I'm mad tired. You know, I just use a lot of slang when I talk. And Mad Love, because I have so much love to give. I'm a very loving person. I'm a very kind person. I like to lead with kindness, and I have a lot of love to give. And it's also like love, the key ingredient in all recipes for me. Like the cookbook's called Mad Love, but if you don't cook with that passion and intention, you know, if you cook from your soul and like visualize the person that's eating it, even if it's yourself, like that's an ingredient that I can't put in the ingredient deck. I can't do that for you. So for all these reasons, that's where Mad Love came about. And then we fought with the publisher to get this name on the book because all the names suggested and all the names we were brainstorming were just like blah blah, you know. So we fought for it, and now it's like it's become a big deal and really exciting. And now the book's called Mad Love. I keep looking over there because there's a stack of them, so I'm looking at the books.
Very
Right.
cool. That's almost spiritual, I have to say,
Yeah,
because that connection that you talk about, that anything that we do with good intent, the intent has to be there. So
absolutely.
I think that's where Mad Love comes from, and it's absolutely on point that that if you cook with so much love and passion, it has to be right.
It has to
You know?
be, and that's why
Yeah.
mom's food is best.
Yes, yes, exactly, absolutely. Fabulous. I love the name. So, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned, given that you've toyed with so many cultures? So, what's the most surprising thing?
There's a lot of surprising things. You know, when I was traveling in 2016, I traveled for
Mhm.
6 months around the world. I cooked in India, I cooked in Dubai, Peru, Italy, London. I went all over the place and I was cooking. But I always go back to India because I was so shocked at the amount of food and ingredients that were there. Because when I came back from that trip, a lot of people were like, "Hey man, so like what's the most exciting thing that you learned?" And I always tell people that I learned that there's so much out there that I don't know. I learned that I don't know as much about cooking and food as I thought I did. Because when I went to India, I thought I had a good grasp on the food. And then I got there and there's all these dishes and all these ingredients. And like, every 100 kilometers, it felt like that I traveled, the
The
menus would
sheer
change.
diversity of it, yeah.
It blew my mind. Even to this
Yeah.
day, like I'm constantly learning new things, especially with the internet and social media. But yeah, I'd say like the most exciting thing that I've learned to this day is that still like I'm so curious, and if I travel now, I feel so much right now, but if I travel every day now until the day that I die, I'll learn probably far less than 1% of what's out there, and it keeps me
Wow.
super
That's again,
curious.
that's amazing. Absolutely. And that is so true. That is so true in pretty much not just in your field. I feel that, that's true for even whatever field that anybody is pursuing in.
Right.
That the vastness of I do not know is so much more than I know, you know.
Absolutely.
And realizing that aspect is so powerful
It
in
certainly
general.
is.
So, are there any global culinary trends that you're excited about now?
You know what? To be honest with you, what I'm really excited about these days is like all these mashups that are happening. And what I mean by mashups is like the fusing of different cultures. I
Right.
do it a lot. I do it a lot in my line of work. I do it a lot in that cookbook. To give you an example, there's like a palak paneer spanakopita. Have you had spanakopita before?
Sorry, what?
Have you had spanakopita before?
No, no.
Spanakopita is famous. It's from Greece and it's phyllo pastry that's layered. And then there's like a sauteed spinach and herb and garlic and dill mixture that's in it. And it's folded up either into like large trays or it's folded up into triangles and it's baked in a puff pastry. And there's lots of feta. So imagine a spinach
Wow.
and feta filled triangle puff pastry brushed with butter. It's like light and flaky and crispy, and phyllo pastry is such a beautiful thing.
That
But like
sounds wonderful.
in my head, I'm like, this is spinach and cheese, right? So why not palak paneer and put it inside? So there's palak paneer spanakopita now, and this is taking like India and taking
Wow.
Greece, putting them together. Another really cool recipe in here
Fabulous.
too. Yeah, it's lamb vindaloo meatballs. So like one of my
Oh
favorite
my
things
God.
to eat in the
I
world is
haven't done
spaghetti and
it in
meatballs.
so long. In so
So I,
long.
so what we do is we instead of making that dish, we make the meatballs and then we sear them in gravy. So instead of spaghetti and meatballs, which is a famous dish in North America and
Right.
around the world, it's so comforting for me, spaghetti and meatballs. It's lamb vindaloo meatballs. So like this is like the
Oh my
fun things
God.
that I like doing. So today we see like ramen pasta and sushi burritos. And I see like nihari pizza, butter chicken pizza. There's so many different things happening out there. I love to see, I'm a big fan of fusing these cultures together, like showing respect to the traditions that came before, but
Of
also
course.
having fun and like making tummy happy and like bringing loved ones around the table and enjoying a good meal. I'm a big fan of all this fusion that's happening.
Fusion. That's fantastic. Now, what is your approach in creating a menu?
It's always different. Like I have a catering coming up in not too long. Actually in Guyana. So I'm flying back out to Guyana. It's over 200 people. It's 8 appetizers, 2 live stations. There's a lot of food going down there. I
Mm.
like a lot of times people reach out to me. I don't cater as much as I catered 2 events last year, like
Okay.
caterings, which I used to do.
Okay.
My work
Mm.
dynamic has changed so much. It always goes back to the client for me. I always like to do what I call bespoke events. So I'm going to take inspiration from them. Typically, they want to recreate things that they've had on their travels, or there's a specific theme for their guests that are coming. So when I'm conceptualizing the menu, I have a nice long conversation with them, and I pull out and I write down as much as I can about them. Whether that's, loves Asian food, can't eat peanuts, no pork, whatever the dietary restrictions are, I get all that down. And then I start to draft the menu. I'll weave in things from my travels, from my culture, time growing up in Toronto. I'll weave all that into it. But it's always custom every single time. One thing I should also mention to you is like growing up in Toronto has been one of the best blessings for me. It's like, I wouldn't say it's the same as growing up in New York City, but we are a melting pot of cultures here. And any day of the
Mhm.
week, any day of the year, I can go and get a different style of food from a different region of the world, which is pretty incredible. It's fun.
Wow.
So that's it impacted me as a human, and it's impacted me as a chef for the things that I want to eat and things that I want to cook.
Mm. Wow. The pressures of perfection in the kitchen. How
Mm.
have you handled that?
Can you give me some more with that? Like ask it in a different way, maybe? Like how do I handle pressure in the kitchen?
Yeah.
I I mean it is what it is. Growing up in the industry with the food dudes, nothing as pressure as back then. We were always short staffed. I remember like having to load up out of the kitchen and get to events, and we'd get to events with like 30 minutes, and it would take us 30 minutes to unload, not even set up. So my career started off very frantically. I had to teach myself over the past years to slow down where I could and just be a little bit more calm and collected because I was always so frantic, running, and setting up. But pressure in the kitchen is not for everybody. I have a lot of experience with it. A lot of my work now, I travel abroad and I work with teams, like whether I was cooking in Portugal last year or whatever it is. Like I literally get off a plane and working with staff I've never met before, and there's a lot of pressure and a lot on the line. Um, but it's just something that you have to deal with. You got to take a deep breath, rely on your experience, be very clear and distinct with your communication, and also like earn the trust of people. I remember I joined somewhere. I was showing up somewhere. I can't remember where it was recently, and there was all these preconceived notions. Oh, it was in Victoria. I did a book tour with a popular airline company here, and I got to Victoria. And prior to me getting there, there was all these preconceived notions that I'm some celebrity chef coming in, and like I'm into all kinds of stuff. And after I had a call with the chef, I was in Jamaica. I had a call with the chef to go through the menu, and then I met like, hey man, I gotta apologize to you, because I thought that you were gonna come in here all egotistical and boss us around. And he's like, you're such a downer guy, very humble, and it's been an honor and privilege to work with you, right? So that goes back to earning the trust of people. I don't like to yell. I like people to make mistakes twice or 3 times. At that point, I'll get a little bit stern, but for the most part, I think it's really important to just be very kind. So handling the pressure in the kitchen, it really comes down to the individual and how they're reacting with that environment.
Right. Right. Now, a fun question. Given that you're always surrounded with food, what is your favorite comfort food? If you have something, I'm sure you do.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. My favorite thing to eat in the world is pizza,
Oh
and
my
not
God.
just not just any type of pizza, but like a New York slice. So I travel to New York every year, and I have
Okay.
my favorite pizzas over there. Um, Another thing that is super comforting to me is instant noodles. And the reason why, like the Korean ones, Japanese, the reason
Yeah.
why these
Yeah.
are so comforting to me is because I think they got me through a lot of hard times over my life. Back in university, back when I didn't have a lot of money, I could spend 99 cents and get instant noodles. So to this day,
Oh, I think
I
we
love
all have during our college days. That
it.
was that was our go-to food. Of
Maggie,
course.
Maggie noodles, yeah. So I mean, like
Yes, yes. So
those.
that was always there.
and all you need is some water, right? You don't need a stove, you don't need an oven.
Nothing. Yeah.
So for me, like
Definitely.
pizza and instant noodles. And I mean, to take it further, like bowls of pho, bowls of ramen, kimchi jjigae or sundubu, which is like Korean bubbling stone pots of like hot broth. All of these things today are very comforting to me. So like, yeah, hot broth, I would say.
Fun. Very cool. So, what's your all-time favorite kitchen gadget that you can't live without?
Um, there's a peel. I don't have a lot of kitchen gadgets.
Okay.
One thing like that I've always said is that I don't ever want to really have a tool that has one use, like a garlic press or anything
That's
like that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
if I
yeah.
if I had to pick my all-time favorite, I would probably go with a microplane. Microplane, for grating nutmeg, parmesan, garlic, ginger,
Okay. Yeah,
zesting
yeah.
citrus.
Right,
That's been
right,
something that's been helpful to me. I always have a microplane with me. The mandolin as well is also very important to get really thin slices of anything, or to even julienne with the teeth inside the mandolin. So if we're
right,
making coleslaws or
right.
anything like that, or salsas or anything like that, I would say mandolin, microplane. Those are two that I wouldn't want to live without.
Cool. Now, if you had to cook for any celebrity or a historical figure, who would that be?
Bourdain, Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
May he rest.
Is
May
there
he rest in
music?
peace. Yeah.
Is there a playlist that you have for your kitchen
Is
when
there?
you're
Sorry,
cooking? Playlist, a music.
I listen to whatever I'm feeling, whether that's like 80s, whether that's lots of hip hop.
Hmm.
I have 4 playlists in my cookbook at the beginning. You can scan the playlist and it takes you right to Spotify. So a lot of
Uh,
my favorite music is in there, but it really sounds like whatever I'm feeling. I might be playing rock and roll. I might be playing like Elton John's greatest hits, Fuji's greatest hits. You never know. Never know what you're going to get. It's whatever's in that moment, to be honest with you. But I always have music playing. I often have AirPods in too. And depending on what I'm doing, I'll have one in because I need to hear what's going on. So I used to have two. I used to have 2 AirPods in, but then you can't hear the sizzling, and like your hearing is so important in the kitchen. And if you can't hear things, timers going off, and like I can tell the state of my onions based on the bubbling, cracking, snapping that I hear. Is it a soft sizzle or is it aggressive? Like I can smell it before it starts burning. I can hear it before it starts to go, right? So yeah, I'll usually have one AirPod in.
wow, very cool. So, what's next for Chef Devan?
There's lots happening. I mean, there's lots of traveling coming up. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'm going to Halifax in Nova Scotia. Then in a few weeks, I'll be in Guyana for the catering. I'll be there for a few weeks. Then I'm in Turkey with Turkish Airlines in May, and it keeps rolling out. I'm trying not to travel as much as I did last year. I traveled 2 to 3 weeks out of every month last year, and it damn near killed me. Between all the work and the cookbook pop-ups all over the place, so I'm trying to take it slower. We're working on the second cookbook in
That
Toronto.
I was just
We have
going to ask you that. Yeah,
yeah,
cool. So
yeah,
you
yeah,
get it.
yeah.
Cool.
I have a meeting about it today. We have big events coming up in Toronto. The Toronto Food and Drink Show is the biggest food show. It's at the convention center downtown. It's thousands of people, hundreds of vendors. They have a chef stage in the middle, and for the 3rd year in a row, I'm headlining Saturday 8 p.m. among like 15, 20 other chefs. So I'm Saturday 8 p.m. again. I'm looking forward. Restaurants Canada is happening soon too. That's for anybody in the food industry. I'll be hosting a big competition on stage. So lots of things happening in and out of town. And we have a few other projects in the pipeline that I can't really discuss just yet. It's not confirmed, but
That
I'm always doing pop-ups. I'm always working
so
with brands.
happening. So there's a lot going on.
Always.
Fabulous, fabulous.
Yeah.
Now, what has been your life mantra?
Life mantra. Okay, so it goes back to ego deflation. It goes back to humility. My life mantra would be repeating this sentence in my head which is true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Okay? True
Wow.
humility, not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. I don't know if you can see in my tattoo here, I have seva.
Okay.
So
Ah, nice.
this all ties back into doing for others. So like selfless service without praise or recognition. So by me thinking of myself less, it allows me to think of others, you know? And that doesn't mean not keep my cup full. You know, that doesn't mean put my oxygen mask on after I put it on someone else. It means look after myself, but also like I feel like I'm put on this world to enrich the experience of my neighbor. So do for others. Like this, these are my mantras in life.
Fabulous, fabulous. Now, have you been through a spiritual journey?
Without question. Absolutely. I'm
Because it looks like, there is a huge spiritual connection. Because
I
without
am
that, the way you're talking about certain things or anything like that, it's definitely there is a huge influence there. So
there's
this question,
there's a couple things there. I was raised in a Hindu household. You know, I was raised going to mandir. I'm not super religious today, but all that time that I spent there, subconsciously, inevitably left an impact on me, right? And my parents to this day are still very religious. Almost 4 years ago, I embarked on a journey of sobriety. Okay. And on that journey of sobriety, I became very spiritual. I had to seek and nurture a connection with a higher power of sorts. And it's something that I've been working on. So I've had many spiritual experiences over the past several years. And I would definitely consider myself a spiritual person.
of course, that explains all the answers as well. Because that's what I was thinking. Yeah, because there is no way without you going through a spiritual journey that you have become. The influence is very natural. The answers were organic. So wonderful, wonderful, excellent. So, in your opinion, what makes a great chef?
No ego, I think is really important. I'm always going to go back to that.
Of
Someone
course,
that can lead. Yeah, leadership qualities are really important.
very
Someone
important.
that can problem solve and delegate and communicate very effectively. And so I think the big thing is someone that's put in the time, put in the work. A lot of
Mm,
kids these days, a lot of people, they see what I do online, you know, and they happen overnight, you know. And me personally, I'm very like on my long journey, I wouldn't say I'm at the beginning. I still have so much I want to do. Like I'm at 10% of what I want to be right
of
now,
course.
right? But I mean, for a chef, like you need to put in the work, and there's no substitute for those long hours, long days, and years of experience. So I think all that's really important.
Of course, of course. Let's talk a little bit about your social media. Now,
Yeah,
you
sure.
have a very good fan followers.
Yeah.
So do you interact with them? How do you interact with them?
One thing over the years that people have always been surprised about, the fact that I respond to every single DM. I have a team that I work with, and I have a community manager that will help us schedule, strategize, posts, and stuff like that. Help
Mm.
with captions, responding to comments, to be transparent with you. But I've always responded to every DM, and a lot of times people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you responded." But I think it's important that someone takes the time to message me, that I take the time to message them back. So I've been
Absolutely.
very, very
Beautiful.
adamant on that.
Yeah. Would you like to share fan moment encounter, follower moment encounter, which
Yeah,
is
I
still
mean,
which like sticks out in your memory, like a couple of them or anything?
yeah, yeah. I'll give you one. There's a lot. I'm very grateful for that.
Of
There's one
course.
local, there's one local, and there's one abroad. I'll start with the one that's local. At the Toronto Food and Drink Show, I told you I've done it for the past few years, and we have a big one coming up in April. There was a lady last year. So I did my live demonstration on stage. I had the biggest crowd. It was, hundreds of people. It was amazing, high energy. And at the end, my cookbook came out in and around that time. So what I was doing was I had my booth set up all weekend where I was selling cookbooks, met a lot of people. And then after my demonstration, there was a long lineup. They put me at a table to meet and greet, but I was signing cookbooks. And there was a long line. And this lady came up to me, and by the time I got, she started bawling. She started crying that she was so excited. She'd been following me for so long on City Line. Yeah. And we were taking a photo together, and there's tears rolling down her face. And I had my Chef Dev apron, so I signed an apron and I signed a book for her. And it was pretty incredible to see him, that, someone I've never met, but someone that was just always so eager and anticipated me to put out content and watch me on television and stuff like that. So it warmed my heart, and it inspired me to work even harder, to know that I could have it. Because there's people out there that will never have a chance to meet me. Really special. Another really cool thing, like I was just in Jamaica. People recognize me in Jamaica, like all over the place, all over. But I was in the Netherlands a couple years ago.
Wow. Okay.
In a city called The Hague, or Den Haag. And we check into my hotel, and I think we were in the lobby area, and a lady comes up to me. She's like, "Oh my God, you're Chef Devan." And I'm like, "How are you recognizing me here?" She's like, "I saw your mom. And when I saw your mom, I recognized her, and I knew that you wouldn't be too far."
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that crazy? So yeah, like I'm Canadian, but the Netherlands, in the middle of Europe, getting recognized. So
that's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. That's
Everyone
amazing.
knows how close I am with mom.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So some rapid fire now.
Okay.
Favorite cuisine to cook?
Indian.
Oh, cool. One word to describe your cooking style.
Dynamic.
A dish that represents your personality.
My person. Grilled cheese.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's neat. Sweet or savory?
Definitely savory.
Okay. Now, if you weren't a chef, what would you be?
I really feel I'd be involved in music, so I would say DJ.
Oh, nice. So, guilty pleasure TV show or a movie? Or movies?
Guilty pleasure? I know everyone. I started watching with my friend Love is Blind, so I would say Love is Blind.
Oh, cool.
So
yeah, there's a love connection somewhere. The Mad Love, the Love is Blind. That's on. Fabulous. Now, if you could have a superpower, it could be a useless one as well. Like, what would that be?
I've always been obsessed with flying.
Ah, very cool. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. Be invisible for a day or read minds in an hour?
Read minds.
Read minds. Isn't that so much fun? I think, yeah, absolutely. That's so much more fun. What are you thinking? I know. What's the last thing you've Googled?
Time in Toronto.
Okay. If you could swap lives.
Because we had that little mix there. That's the last thing I Googled. Time in Toronto.
Oh yeah. Oh cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So if you could swap lives with any fictional character for a day, what would that be?
Fictional
character.
Jon Snow from Game of Thrones.
Oh, nice. Now, if your life had a theme song, what would that be?
This is a good one. Your Love by The Outfield.
See, there you go. There's love again. Of course. Okay. Very cool. Now, we'd like one piece of advice from you for the next generation of chefs.
Yeah, one thing I get asked this question a lot. It's almost like the same question as like, what would I tell my younger self? I feel like it's a very similar question.
Right. Yep.
And if,
Yeah.
and if I could go back and tell my younger self anything, or if I could leave something for the next generation, it's to not care so much what people think about you and not be so consumed by it. I held back, and I held back from taking a lot of risks in my life, from the fear of rejection and the fear of being judged, or being critiqued. And these days, I live a very not a risky life, but these days I take a lot of risks. You'll see that in my content. You'll see that in the things that I do. I think it's really important. Obviously, not telling people to do things that will harm them or injure them, but I was just always very consumed. It's like, if I do this, what's that person going to say? Or if I do this, how are they going to feel about it? And really, at the end of the day, it's just really small chips. One thing I love to tell myself is like 5 years, in 50 years, in 100 years, this small thing that I'm obsessing over is not going to matter. No one's going to care about, did I use this hashtag on a post, or if I combined these two ingredients together, it'll never be spoken of, right? So it's a very small thing that I shouldn't be consumed by. Yeah, let's say don't care so much what people think about you.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely. And I think that's a very, very super powerful message.
Right.
I think, Devan, we have pretty much covered everything. And it was fabulous talking to you. One last thing, if you can tell us something about Global Influencers Hub, a message for us, for our platform.
It's a message for your platform, and it's a message for everyone out there. It's 4 words, and it's in my Instagram handle, and it's work hard and stay humble.
Wonderful. Excellent. Excellent. Now, what is your feedback about talking to us or anything like that? We'd like to, a bite from you about for Global Influencers Hub.
I've done a lot of different podcasts, and in many of the podcasts, I did one last week, for example, and in many of the reviews I do, I'll almost always get the questions, but one thing I really enjoyed about today is that it broke up the work part of it for me with the fun questions that you asked about, being invisible or reading minds. I thought like those were really good questions to ask. It made it very playful, and it made it less serious for me. So I appreciate that approach that you took here today with me, because it lightened the mood, and it felt less like work. It felt like I was just chatting with a friend. So I appreciate that.
Yes. Wonderful. Fabulous. Wishing you all the very best.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was lovely talking to you. Yeah.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.